Mission by so grateful and Labrador Coast Guard, we are reading you loud and clear.
Oh, hello. Welcome to Sea Views. I'm Julia Gosling and I have Adam, my co-host here from Chirp.
Hi, Julia. How you doing?
Yeah, great. Morning, Adam. And here is Gordon Foote. So Gordon is an offshore operations professional with many, many years of experience. So we're going to find out all about the offshore world with Gordon. Hello, Gordon. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, hi.
Hi, Julia. Hi, Adam. And, welcome to everyone that tunes into Sea Views. Yeah, many, many years. Yeah,
Yes.
A couple of decades, I think. We won't go too far with that.
I won't say how many, but
a maritime career. That's the nice way of putting it, isn't it? A maritime career.
An extensive maritime career, and working offshore, you've gone from Royal Navy submarines back in your younger days. You now work in the offshore sort of high hazard industry, but that experience you've had. You've worked across oil and gas, cables, renewables. I mean, Adam and I would love to hear a bit more about what that offshore industry means and what it involves. It's quite an interesting area.
Well, I guess it is, yeah. And it's become more so with the advent of wind turbines and the offshore wind industry and the renewables as we know it. And over the past 25 years, there's been a lot of job opportunities there. But yeah, funny enough, I started in submarines, and I guess a lot of people are thinking, how does that switch submarines to going on ships or doing marine construction? But as an engineer, this is, and people that are in STEM subjects, male or female, that are thinking about engineering as a career, it's a great start because there is that flexibility, that adaptability. And of course, as we know, there's so many different variations of engineering or engineering tasks that are out there. So really, that's how I ended up in a transition like that, retiring from the Royal Navy. And I had a fantastic career, and I started at 17, which is a bit young for some that would think about what sort of career they want now. But I'd recommend the armed forces to anyone. It's a fantastic way of being provided responsibility at a really early age, or in a really junior part of what your career would be. But also the extensive training is second to none. So, yeah, I came out as an engineer and retired and thought, what shall I do now? And of course, the sea was my passion always. So I stuck with the maritime. And I started out with a few gigs doing some ultra high res seismic for the hydrocarbon industry, worked in oil and gas a bit. Renewables became a thing like 25 years ago. So a lot of marine construction moved to the more inshore area. But in the meantime, of course, there's always been the telecommunications, the internet cables, the subsea power cables. So that cable industry has been ongoing as well. So having that flexibility and being able to transition as an engineer between all those sort of different marine construction tasks means that I've had a career that it's forever evolving, really, from the different ships that I go on, where they're initially smaller research vessels that are doing topography or seabed mapping, some remote operated vehicle intervention on the seabed. I've worked with the ocean cleanup, removing plastics from mid-Pacific garbage patch, which is some really interesting work. And then doing some cable work, a little bit of oil and gas work, but predominantly wind farms and renewables. And there's so many different engineering tasks involved in the construction of one of those offshore wind farms. So when we fly over in an aeroplane or something and we see like 100 turbines out there, it's amazing the tasks that are involved in actually constructing that. And that's the really interesting part, I find.
That is a really, really fascinating and varied career. And what's driven that? Is that just been because your passion and your interest has like taken you between those things, or was there a theme if you look back through your life, or what?
I could say it was tech, or I enjoy the tech, or the evolving tech.
Yeah.
I'm of a generation where that tech has moved rapidly from each decade. When you consider that I, as a child, used to go into a red phone box with old money and hope that somebody was on the other end, whereas we've got watches and phones where we can video live stream people and move it, all sorts of things. So that has also happened in the maritime with marine construction, whether it's the robots that we use subsea or the drones above water that we do inspections with. Yeah, fascinating. But I'm going to tell you primarily why I do it and what floats my boat is the people. And that's because the maritime has got some absolutely fantastic people. You've got to be a little bit daft like me because you've got to leave your family, go away from home for extended periods and that. But I think the Navy sort of got me used to that. So we can talk about resilience maybe in that way. But yeah, it's the people. And some of these very large construction vessels that I've been on off West Africa and that may have 25 different nationalities. They will have around the 30 to 40 different disciplines on there, from logistics, QA/QC, welding, catering, hotel, helicopter pilots, marine mammal observers. I mean, the blue economy has got such a variety of different trades. And I do the Inspiring a Future program in schools, where I go in and tell the youngsters that are looking at the world for work that apart from really chimney sweep, and there was one young lady that asked me, do they have horses? Because she was really into horses. But apart from those, I think you can pretty much do all other jobs in the maritime context somewhere, whether it be on a cruise liner or offshore vessel like me. So yeah, the people is what it's all about. And it's teamwork, how the psychology of people are going to an alien place, which isn't a factory, a hotel, or an office block. It's not on land. First of all, we're going to an alien environment, which is a ship. And then we're walking around that ship, which is totally different than a house or an office or a building site even, because you've got weather doors, hatch combing, you're treading over things. The safety implications are so much more because there's so many more hazards around you. And yeah, when you look at seafaring, it is a high-risk industry. When you then add that to subsea works, trenching cables or hydrocarbons, or with the offshore wind industry, the heavy lift that's involved in those, then yeah, the people have got to be of that mindset that they know that safety is always the first principle, but it's not just you or a buzzword or something that you have to do. It's something that you live by. So we're all integrated together to have each other's backs, to be dynamic in our thought processes and our work processes about what we're about to do, and to ensure that whatever we do is safe and as efficient as we can.
I mean, safety in the offshore industry has certainly in European waters and the North Sea really stepped up, didn't it, over the last 20, 30 years? It's a pretty good safety record, isn't it? So, safety is something that's been taken really seriously and professionally in that industry. Would you agree with that? It's like all
industry. Yeah, most definitely. And it's like all industries. They have their moments, the watershed, when something does go wrong and a lesson has to be learned. And I think aviation did that and learnt lessons in a far quicker way with their equivalent to the bridge resource management, because they realised that they had all those passengers sat behind them. The risk was multiplied by, the passengers that they were doing in aviation. So the safety aspects of not only maintenance spares, but how they operated and flew those aircraft. And as a technology moved into aviation in a big way, like fly-by-wire and remotes, that became a big thing. I think that the maritime is always, should we say, a little bit slower in doing that. But when you think of the disasters, and there are many that are significant that stay within history, starting with the Titanic, why we have SOLAS, why we have more than 100% of lifeboats and life rafts for those passengers on board to this day now was because of that sort of event. To the hydrocarbon side with Piper Alpha, which anniversary last month, unfortunately meant that the loss of lives does mean it drives both leadership, people, processes, and law, more importantly, into thinking a little bit different about safety. And like I said earlier, it's not just a bolt-on or something that has to be done, and it's never a compliance issue. When you're out there at deck level with that sort of equipment, it's got to be integral to your life. It's got to be how you wake up and to start your shift. It's about how you drive yourself and your teams through that shift. Yeah, and of course, Horizon Macondo in the Gulf of Mexico as well is another one where the outpouring, not least from the environmental impact of incidents like that, means that a whole new host of processes and people's way of thinking. And of course, I think, we used to put children up chimneys. I was talking about chimney sweeps earlier, and the Victorian way of how we managed work and how we go about work has changed significantly. And if you just look at the last decade or the last 2 decades about how we work in those sort of environments, it's phenomenal. It wasn't that long ago that people didn't know what PPE stood for. Now it's part of how we go to work, and we consider what PPE we're wearing. So yeah, it's not just the protective equipment and what we are doing, because on the hierarchy of risks, what you're wearing is your last resort, basically. Yeah. But just as importantly, like some of those topics I've just mentioned, it's about how we interact with the environment. So we're a lot more conscious, or rather the corporates are, about how they're seen by everyone, that you've got ESG now, and people are thinking about socially, and is it acceptable how we go about our business and what we do as our trade. So if your business is gas or generation, electricity, or power through cables, we have to look about how we are part of that ecosystem, and what life support and life systems and the oceans and the seas that we're working in as our all-encompassing environment. So yeah, it's more of a holistic look about how we go about our work now.
Yeah, modern
I
way.
think you mentioned about 2 decades as well. I'd like to say that I think, having worked earlier than 2 decades ago in an industry which you mentioned, Europe or North America, had sort of standards and controls, I think that was a really good way of framing how it's not particular advanced countries that just kept that knowledge or those standards. It was driven by the corporate responsibility that meant that, especially in the hydrocarbons world, that a lot of the big oil majors had to operate in less developed countries to the same standards, and met the same standards, especially from environmental control, about how they went about their business in the safety aspect, as they did in local waters in Europe and North Africa. So I've worked predominantly in West Africa, for instance, and I can vouch that a lot of those companies then were driving permanently. And that also assisted the less developing countries, because their workforce needed to get up to speed with the tech. They also needed to operate that safely. So a lot of training and a lot of education went into areas of employees in less developed countries to bring them up to speed, to understand the tech that the advanced nations were using. But it meant that they weren't, that the corporate side was looking at it globalized as the whole planet. And it didn't matter whose water or whose back door they were operating in. They had to meet the same standards, whether it's the training, the safety, or how they interacted with the environment. So that was a really good, that was a watershed moment there, I think, that made them drive that.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting time actually in maritime. Lots of people have talked about this shortage of seafarers, younger people. Do they want to go and do the offshore life away from home? All of those sort of privations that you have as a seafarer. But yeah, at the same time, I'm also seeing a lot of quite positive material coming out on social media that's really promoting offshore jobs. I assume it's probably aimed at younger people, but promoting good pay, good accommodation, good food, etc. And I'm also thinking, is this a good time for people to consider it as a career? AI is changing some of the shore-based jobs, for younger people. Maybe maritime could be seeing a bit of a resurgence in terms of a career choice.
I think it always is, because I'm the guy that I'm the sort of glass half full type of guy all the time. I'm always putting a positive spin on it. There have been disasters, and I've just mentioned a few in the maritime. But overall, when you consider, the higher deaths through heart attack, strokes, and just driving on a motorway, but it's the blue economy, if you look at it that way. So it doesn't necessarily mean to say you have to go for a deck officer or engineering officer in merchant navy. There's so many other trades, whether it's analysis, whether it's working with engines, whether it's working as an engineer, whether it's working with the environmental permits. There's such a wide range of jobs out there that I think we're always going to be looking for competent young people to join those sort of industries and become part of that industries, because like every other industry, it needs that to attain that longevity. We need those that are retiring to pass on and mentor and that before they depart the world of work. And the youngsters need to understand that there are so many opportunities out there, depending on what sort of degree route or apprenticeship route you want to go to. And of course, many of the trades and that can come in through doing some work experience or summer work, because as an island, our coast, there's quite a lot of work going on in the renewables. So there's a lot of local colleges, not just the big main marine universities and colleges, that can provide forms of work. And some of that is just day running. So if you're just going out to the local wind farms and that, you're on the CTVs or the small vessels, the small catamarans that take technical teams out there and that. So the jobs involved with that are, again, HSE, quality control, environmental permitting, the technicians themselves, whether it's electrical, hydraulic, pneumatic, all those sort of trades that one would think, oh, the youngsters want to get proficient in that and work on a building site or go and work in a local industry. If they're near the coast or they're within a commuting distance, there's nothing stopping them to do that. And like all occupations or main forms of employment like that in the maritime, we need the youngsters in the bottom to progress and to be able to upskill themselves and remain competent in the whole variety of tasks. And of course, 25 years ago when renewables came in, things are different now. The technology's moved on. These turbines have got massively bigger. So a whole host of opportunities. But the maritime as a whole, I think, is always like that buoyant. It's reinventing itself. There's always something new to look forward to. So I think for the main part in the maritime, it's instead of talking within the own echo chamber, it's getting that message out. And some of the stuff that I do, whether it's engaging with schools and the youngsters, or my mentoring with a few universities and Plymouth YMCA down here, is to encourage the youth to think, a little bit more than just outside their back door, a little bit more than the town or city they're in, and why not think a little bit more than the country you're in? It's an international and global workforce, and if you're that way inclined or of a mind to work in that sort of environment, there are fantastic opportunities there for growth. Yeah. Like you say, for financial, because some of the salaries are better. The conditions are so much more better than they were 20 years ago as well. So it's all a plus. It's all a positive. And through social media and what I do with Inspiring the Future is trying to promote that to a much wider audience and a younger audience. So guys like me with grey hair can eventually retire at some time.
You got to bring the new blood in before you can go, and you do a great job. You do a great job of that with the the posts that you do and the topics that you cover, and just showing a bit of real life as well and what it's like.
Yeah, and it's it's not just corporates, but it's some of the educational or some of the individual people that inspire me. And it's good to promote that. Whether it's loosely linked to the maritime, normally it is with the maritime, but loosely linked with the maritime. There is so much good going on out there. And I think I like to think that if you keep positive people around you and you are a positive person, it attracts more positivity, and your life is so much better for it. And we've discussed before we went on air here about well-being, mental health and things like that. This is all part of it. If you're a negative person, you're unsure, don't know where to go, you're not going to draw that positivity towards you. So I think thinking about life or how you go through that world of work, and for the greater part of your life, you are actually at work. It's good to put a positive spin on it and be that positive person.
Yeah, you're right. We're at work an awful long time, aren't we? And obviously for seafarers, it's really seafarers and working offshore. I mean, that whole resilience thing, you've got a very different life, haven't you? In fact, you are living where you work, which is different to what a lot of people do. So resilience is something that seafarers have got to have, or you've got to develop it, haven't you? And looking after the people that you work with a little bit.
I like to make a point that in modern times now, resilience isn't all about putting up with stuff or tolerating or I must do more, because in effect that's burning the candle at both ends, and that's where none of us survive that. Not you as a person, nor the team you're interacting with, or the safety of all, or what it is your endeavour and what you're trying to achieve. So resilience is more about a mindset of how you interact with the environment around you and your understanding of it. And the first thing that I always point to is yourself, your inner self. It's difficult to build any sort of resilience if you don't actually know who you are, what you're good at, what your capabilities are, or also what you're not quite so good at, or where you're a little bit weak in some areas. Because to not understand that, or to put a blanket over that and pretend it doesn't exist, you're going to end up burning the candle at both ends. So,
self-awareness.
If you're somebody like if you need 8 hours sleep, that should be an aim of you to start with before you start thinking about the team and everything around you, because you're not going to operate with any efficiency, let alone safely, if you're not in that frame of mind. And again, frame of mind, when you're going out on the work site, it doesn't have to be jumbled with 6 things that are going on in your family. It should be concentrating on what the task is ahead of you, what the risk assessment says, who you're working with, what that task is going to do, how long it's going to take, and be your concentration on that. The human mind is fantastic. We can multitask, although my wife says I can't very well. But see, the whole idea of multitasking means that, again, know your limits. If it's 3 or 4 things you can keep on the bounce at once, then fine. But when it gets to 8 or 9, that you're not coping, you're firefighting then. And that's where the efficiency and the safety goes, and as does your mental health and well-being.
Yes.
So a good thing I like to think about is looking in the mirror in the morning and saying to yourself, how can I be a better version of me by the end of the day? What sort of tasks have I got? Am I in the right frame of mind for what I want to achieve? If I'm not, take that step back. Well, all right, I can't commit to those 2 meetings in the afternoon. I must commit to this in the morning. Schedule your day, your workflow, so that it keeps a happy balance within yourself. And you'll find that balance within yourself then works with other people. So instead of coping and firefighting, you're then actually managing and leading your way through a day that suits your capabilities and what you can do. And that doesn't mean to say that you have to be scared of everything or be conscious or end up anxious of doing things. It should be that you've been proactive, thought ahead about what that is, understand what attributes or your capabilities are, and whether you're able to do that to a level that you're happy with, and then work with that as you're going forward. I think a lot of people, especially in the younger generation, rush into things. It's like on your phone when you're scrolling through. The information is just overload all the time. And if you step into the world of work or your next task with that kind of overload, the human mind and your brain functions and how you adapt to it are not built for that. So I think, putting things in its right place, counting what you're doing, prioritize where you're going to go, and then move forward. And I learned that the hard way in submarines, where you didn't have, shall we say, lifeboats or life rafts. There was no way out. What you had there is your tin can, and with your shipmates as a team, you had to survive in that environment. So that meant that you were paramedics, you were firefighters, you were agony aunts, and you were best friends to your shipmates. You couldn't go down the pub at weekends, blow off steam or recharge batteries, what people like to do or say now. And you couldn't go online. You couldn't get your kicks somewhere else. So you had to adapt to that environment, understand who you were, how you interacted with everyone else, and be a proactive and prominent and a safe member of that team to complete a mission. Life itself isn't exactly a mission, but now I'm in the offshore construction industry, I still frame it the same way, that we still rely on our buddies, the people that we're with. We still, if you respect your teammates, turn up with the right frame of mind for the job that you're about to do. And that way, with integrity, you can say, I'm keeping everyone safe. And when you become a supervisor or in a leadership role, like myself, I think it's adamant that you have to think about those aspects of resilience, because then you have to understand how other people are coping or not coping.
Yeah.
Who's the best person to put in that part of the team? Should we not step back from that? And everyone does toolbox talks, or whatever, the risk assessment has gone in. And it became a thing about mental health and well-being, saying it's not okay to be okay. We have toolbox talks now where we say, is everyone okay to go ahead? It might be a heavy lift. And if you can relate it to a construction site, or in a factory, somebody about to operate a forklift truck, you wouldn't go there if your mind's on, an incident or some sort of challenges at home. So we're a lot more open, and not to go down the route of psychological safety, but I think the offshore industry has taken that on board in a really big way, and understands that, forcing, or what the old school way of doing was, you've been allocated to that job, get on with it. That doesn't happen anymore. People really think about the people that are going to interact with that machinery, that heavy lift, that next task that has risk. And if one part of that of mitigation is that you've given PPE, you've talked about it, that's not enough. You've got to make sure that the mindset is there, that the people have turned up authentically and said that they're capable of doing it.
Yeah,
and when somebody says they're not,
self-awareness thing. Yeah, that self-awareness thing that you talked about earlier, Gordon, is so important, isn't it? That if you understand what you're good at, we work in teams. So we're not all the best at everything, are we? But in a team, you can make it work. It's really interesting that is recognised by leadership.
It
I
is.
think on my strapline on my LinkedIn, I put humble seafarer. So for all the accolades that you talked about at the beginning, or the life that I've had, and a fantastic career, no doubt, but I still count myself as a humble seafarer. And I
But
read
you
a
made a
couple
really
of
good.
books of some years back.
You made a really good point earlier, though, about and you related it to submarines. And I remember it myself when I was in the Navy. You know, you didn't have internet access, and it was almost a relief, wasn't it? It was like, right, all lines gone. You go to sea, and you knew that, and whatever happened, it was just you, and all the pressures that you were facing were the ones right in front of you, because, like you say, you parked on the jetty. And I do wonder, I mean, I don't know if you've got any comment about or any thoughts on, you know, it's great that we give people now, you know, internet and links back to their family, and they can sort of do all this sort of stuff and stay in touch with their friends, sure. But I think that also brings pressures, and it does
Double-edged
erode
sword.
that teamwork, doesn't it, slightly, because you're now talking outwards, not inwards.
Yes, and I think that some of these discussions came on about a decade ago when internet got better and we weren't on dial-up, and then there was more bandwidth, and now with Starlink, etc., it seems like you've got it the same at home. But it seemed to me a bit ironic that it was the corporate side, or sometimes the charity side, and sometimes academics with the research side, saying, "Oh, now we've given these seafarers so much bandwidth. Now all the problems from home are arriving on their ship." But what people fail to consider, I think, is that if you're in a factory or a building site, or working in a hotel, you have the luxury of all that if you want, and there are protocols. If you're customer facing, you're not on your phone. If you're about to operate some machinery on the building site, you're not on your phone. So everyone's got to learn about that. But it seemed a bit ironic that the people that had all the super bandwidth were saying, "Oh, but should we be giving this to seafarers, because then their divorce or their car payments that are overdue will start arriving on the ship?" But let's face it, that's life. That is life. And why should the rest of the planet that lives on land have the luxury of that interconnectivity, but the poor old seafarer still be on the 50 megabits a month or something?
Yes,
Like, that is a really good point.
Why is that? And I also noticed that it was. I'm not saying it was academics or the corporates primarily, but it was always, it seemed to be the people that never went to sea that had a statement or a judgment to make. But I think, like Stephen Jones' happiness index, I think that's a true record of what's out there and what the seafarers are thinking. And that's globally on a whole variety of different ships, vessels, routes, and different grades of internet or connectivity that they're receiving, or not, as the case may be. But I think it's life. And it's true what you say when you say it's a double-edged sword, that a lot of your life then comes into where you're on the ship. Yeah. And of course, it is in a form of remote working. So you don't have friends or family with you to bounce that off. So some of the challenges in life that arrive with you can end up being very lonely in a cabin on your own on a ship that's not going to get to port again for another month.
Yeah,
and I think that
Gordon,
has implications as well.
I know you worked. You've given quite a lot of your time over your career to a number of really good charities that work in that area, and so this is an area that you've got a real passion for, haven't you? Supporting people while they're working at sea. Do you want to tell me about that?
I think it came about in submarines. I used to help as like an assistant educational officer. I didn't do too bad at school, but I got from a GCSEs or O levels. So there was a lot of youngsters that left school with nothing, struggling to read in some cases. So although they could get into the armed forces, their educational level was not even secondary school sort of standard. So I used to help them improve literacy or numeracy, and it gave me a real passion for helping other people. And I think as technology moved on, and then we had the internet and things like LinkedIn, where you can promote the idea of fundraising or assisting other people or empowering other people to do well, was just a modern medium of being able to achieve that on a bigger scale, really. And how I work with the charities or the fundraising I do at the moment is think about actionable outcomes. Yeah. Now, no disrespect to the whole wide range of charities out there, because I'm sure all of them are well-meaning and do good. But I like to see that it was affecting seafarers at the front line, whatever I was doing. So I selected organisations that I knew whose resources were going primarily there to seafarer welfare. And some of them I help with Safer Waves, which is to support those that have been influenced by, unfortunately, harassment, bullying, sexual assault at sea.
Yes, we
Sailor
have had
Society.
we've had Safer Waves on the Sea Views podcast in the past,
amazing,
and that's
amazing organisation.
Great work.
Yeah, so that's an actionable outcome, and it's directly affecting seafarers at sea. So it meant a lot to me. Sailor Society is another one that doesn't invest their money in headquarters or fancy buildings and things. It's directly going into digital platforms and apps that go straight to the seafarers globally. So, the point of access is the seafarer themselves. They don't have to go somewhere or fill out forms and things. It was all about, where I saw the benefit of donation. And I was hoping that people, in part of the Inspiring the Maritime campaign, would like to donate to organisations where they knew that their donation would go straight into frontline support for seafarers, and that was one of them. And then most recently, the QVSR, Queen Victoria Seafarers Rest, for homeless seafarers. And not many people think about seafarers being homeless.
Yeah.
But they've got a 175-bed unit that is full to capacity, and they're trying to raise funds to build more. And subsequently, they've been doing it since 1843. So the transition through periods of history of how that changes means that they're also assisting veterans and others. So being a veteran myself as well, that kicked in, and it's to do with the homeless. So that was really good. Yeah. So there are fantastic causes out there. I've also done it, cancer research, Alzheimer's. So sometimes it's something that's affected your family, or people that are close to you, and you want to help with that. And I think that's how people look at fundraising anyway, and how they donate. So some people want to permanently help children's charities, for instance, or it might be something that's affected their family. So for whatever reason, I'm always grateful that those that donate a coffee or a tea, or some of the very kind ship registries and corporates out there, and shipping companies have donated on a large scale. And it's nice to think, and I think that's what the maritime community is all about.
Yeah.
Not just being in there for the buck and driving a ship and going down a certain road. It's having that awareness of all the other interacting people that make up the maritime community are all about. And although we're a small cog in a big wheel, it's nice to think that even with these small contributions to the price of a coffee, that you can actually create something or achieve something that's so much bigger than yourself.
Well, Gordon, you've raised a lot of money for charity and a lot of awareness, which I think is equally as important. And I definitely donate to you, because then you slightly ease my conscience that I can't do these great big challenges that you do. I mean, some of the things that you've done over the years, like the huge walks and the kayaking thing where we did, I mean, they just look absolutely exhausting to me and daunting, and so I pay you to do it, so
you don't have to.
I can feel good about myself, but you do the hard work.
It makes me laugh, because you are not alone, and through direct message or private messaging through the back door, because not everyone wants to say that they've donated, even because there's so many anonymous. But you are not alone. The amount of people that say, "Thank God you're going up that mountain," or "Thank God you're doing that trek, Gordon," because I'm not doing that. No way. And what I say is, like, how I look at it is, it's never about me. It's about, like you said initially, is highlighting what that charity and those fantastic teams, for the vast majority, of volunteers as well, and the work that they're doing for the wider community. That's what it's all about for me. Yeah. And the comments that you make, right, I can donate some money and then I don't have to. I just love that spin, because that's fantastic. Yeah. And I think that the way I look at it as well, when I write some of the posts that I do, is to reflect on the fact that, like, was it 2023, I did Kilimanjaro. And one of the things I was saying is, in your life and the challenge that you have, it might seem like a mountain, what challenge you have. It's not a physical mountain, but the challenges that you're having feel like that to you. Yeah. So I'm physically climbing that mountain, but you can also, by just taking it one step at a time. And it's like that bite size, whether it's education or whether it's an endeavor that you wish to do, like go to the gym or something. Just baby steps, take one small step at a time. And that's the inspiring bit, because I'm not 21 anymore. I've got a fair few decades on top of that, and I've got grey hair, and people see that and go, "That's that mad guy again who's lived half his life in a tin can anyway. And now he works on ships, but now he's going up mountains and doing this trekking and all that." Yeah. And the idea is it captures some people's imagination, and the amount of private messages that I get that say, just that inspiring message. It didn't have to be about me. They might not have an affinity with that charity even. It's just that somebody's got off their butt, done a nice post and talked about the challenges that you're facing and that you can overcome them if you prioritize, put them in order. Don't think that doom is all around you and going to fall on your head, but just take that one step. That can lead to 2 steps. And by the time you get to step 3 or 4, and there might be 1 or 2 backwards, but you're moving in the right direction. And I think a lot of people's lives sometimes are worked around that, because we all get overwhelmed with social media. We all get overwhelmed with the next project that your boss wants in, or this report has to be in at a certain time. So I try and put that in a little packet that people can understand maybe. And if I'm canoeing across Costa Rica or something like that, good job he's doing that.
Thank you. Thank you, Gordon, because you salve my conscience. And also, you have a great positive attitude, and like you said, that attracts people, when somebody is positive and tries to look at the positive in things. I mean, you've obviously helped lots of people during your career, and I can see I know you're an empathetic person, but how did you get to be so successful in your career then? I mean, where did you went into the Navy, you started then working offshore, but what kind of has driven you on?
Luck.
And you're not meant to admit that.
You can, because I'm being authentic. Some of it is luck, and life is all about luck. You're on this journey, and there's offshoots and routes, and sometimes you think, do I take that one? You procrastinate? Or maybe I'll do that in 5 years' time. I'm the sort of guy, and I think the sort of military background sort of brought that on. And I do remember a relative saying to me, if they ask for volunteers or anything, don't put your hand up. But of course, I was the weird guy. I always, 1 pace forward march. I always stepped forward and said, I'll volunteer for that, because I think that's how I started in life. I wanted to do something challenging, something different. And I saw the Navy from when I used to go to Navy days as a holiday with my parents, because that's all we could afford. I come from a challenging background, a broken home, that I didn't have any advantage in life. I went to an inner city comprehensive, got a mediocre sort of education. I thought, what can I do with this? I won't be held down. So I won't be defined by the circumstances that brought me into the world, and I will go where I want to go. So it was a positive mindset. Apart from that, it was luck. And when I joined the Navy, I thought, what's next? And I think as an engineer, I was looking at NASA and thinking, there can't be anything greater than that. But I wasn't an American, so the submarine service raised its hand and said, you can volunteer and come. What's that mean? It means being isolated in this tin can for weeks and months on end, but you'll be doing some special stuff that nobody else can talk about. And to this day, I had a fantastic career where I can't talk to my grandchildren about it. The government neither confirmed nor denied where I was. There's some places geographically on the map that you could go and get a flight to now, but back in the day, it was never going to happen. But I went there. So, it gave you that. It can link to safety as well, with the risks and hazards that we took, but they were all controlled. So I think in life, if you take that step forward and take a bit of risk, but have that control, whether that be pre-knowledge or understanding the magnitude of that risk you're going to take, or doing your homework, doing your due diligence. So if it's a career route or something, think about it, and don't say, no, I'm not going to do that. That's too hard. That's too difficult. Or that's another 2 years of my life. I'll never be able to do that. My sort of emphasis is to take that step forward, tread the water. You're not going to drown on day one. Test the water, see what things work. And that's how it happened for me, because I retired from the Navy back in the day, the first time, and I worked 7 years offshore. But they had the second Gulf War. The Navy needed more people. They asked me if I'd rejoin. I actually went back and did a second term of service for another 5 years. So was it luck? I don't know. It just happened that was the journey I was on. That opportunity arose. I still had children going through schools like everyone else, a mortgage to pay or car payments, whatever. It was a way of paying the bills, but it was also a way of giving back to me, to my country, and service again. But when that time came to an end, I returned to the offshore industry, but took another leap of faith. And instead of working with company or for companies, I decided to go out on my own as a consultant. and that it holds a lot of risk.
Yes.
You have to build things like that on a reputation. Of course, I'd been back in the service for 5 years, so it wasn't as though I was an unknown entity, but I wasn't bang up to date. So I had to readjust my CV. I had to think about the risks that this would involve. I had to think about still paying bills at home and that, like everyone else does.
Yeah.
But it was a bit of luck. Some of the good friends that I'd made and people that were out there in the offshore industry said, "Oh yeah, we remember you, Gordon. Yeah, well, you can do this, you can do that." I think it was because I was positive. I was a problem solver. I didn't come with baggage. I came here and said, "Well, where is it?" It didn't matter where in the world it was. I could go there, do it, make it happen, fix things, make people happy. And I saw that as a skill that I had. And you don't need a degree in anything.
No, that's
to have
something
those
that's
personal skills.
Yeah, that's part of your bag of skills that you got. Now, I really love to know all the places you've been. What do you think was the most exciting or interesting place you've got to in the world? Any favourites?
I don't know. I love the maritime, but the most exciting is actually the gangway as you're leaving, because you're going home for your family. But that's a bit corny, isn't it? But even at my age and the longevity of my marriage and that, that's the key moment, going down that gangway for the last time. I'm thinking, that's it, flight home or ferry home or whatever. That's really good. What's the best places? I think if I was to look at it as an educational point of view, I mean, I knew how Africa was impoverished, or I thought I understood what poverty was. Until you work there, or you're in the poor areas, which are invariably, the poorest or surrounding the poor areas, you will never know what poverty really is. And I might be a bit Victorian, but I used to come back and then tell my children, this is what poverty is. It's not that you don't have your Nike trainers for Christmas. This is real poverty.
That was an eye-opener.
As the saying goes, there's an eye-opener. So being able to bring some affluence or some tech or some training or some motion into some countries' way of working, or to bring some affluence to some countries is mind-blowing. It's quite changed. Some of it is for the worst, unfortunately, but for the vast majority, some of the companies that move into developing countries, whether it's hydrocarbons or tech or whatever, that the meaning is there to do well. And usually you have to see it, 10 years down the line. It's not going to be a 12-month project or an 18-month project. And some of the places I've worked in the world, I've had the privilege of going back there 10 years or 15 years later. And it's magnificent, some of the changes that it's brought upon. And I'm a people person, so I see it in the people. And I know that, a lot of the Africans that I work with and have now been able to go to university, if they chose to, have now got a degree. They've now got into senior positions. And like most Africans, they're not only supporting their own family, there is one very large extended family that they're supporting in it. And it's brought not just affluence, I guess, to that corner, but a mindset that they're part of the world, part of some, these things that we're building. And I think that's where it empowers people, because beforehand they've been disenfranchised, or somebody's brought it to them, buy this from us. Whereas when they become integral to your crew or part of what you're building there, and it's their country at the end of the day, then I think that's good news for that.
Just to sort of join a few dots that you've talked there, you talked about mental resilience, which I always look at as sort of like your own personal internal PPE. And when you talked about going to parts around the world of real poverty, like proper poverty, actually sometimes what always strikes me when you meet people that genuinely have nothing is that they always have hope, which is what was meant to be left in Pandora's box once it had been opened. Going back to the Greek myth. But you're absolutely right. Sometimes the people where I draw inspiration from, because I've gone around the world, is you meet some people that literally have nothing, and yet they carry a flame within themselves of a sort of self-belief that is just inextinguishable. It's amazing.
I follow that exactly. And sometimes I think from my privileged background or the passport I hold and that, and I'm old enough to have grey hairs. Some people don't have that longevity even in life because of the poverty that they live in, and that is that they can smile. And I know what it takes us sometimes to smile, because we're on a podcast now, we're smiling to the audience and that, but there's days when we have to make ourselves smile and that. And but those people I see with the poverty, I think, you're living like this, you don't have nothing, but the smile is on the face. And it's not just for me, because I can see that smile from a distance. And I think that's all to do with human spirit.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm not saying I'm a magnet, but I have that empathy, like you mentioned earlier, that I can understand where that's coming from. And I'm a humble enough guy to absorb that and then share it with colleagues, friends, and of course, even my own children, to help them understand not just how lucky they are in lives and that, but how they can help or empower other people in quite simple ways sometimes. And it needn't be expensive, but sometimes just those little things count. And having a smile to give back is one of those ways. And it costs nothing. It's tax-free. And some people just struggle with that as well. Yeah, so some of the guys that I've got on board and that, just being their mate, their shipmate, and the project might be 2 rotations of 30 days or something, but we learn about each other's families, each other's struggles. At the end of the day, it's one big humanity, and we are not so different. Because I think if you come from an affluent country, most of the things that you've got are material things that you could actually live without. And some of those material things come with big price tags, big challenges, big loans, and big headaches.
Yes,
So,
true.
Yeah, think about what you build around in your life and what's really important to you, and you'll find out when it comes down to it, it's actually your own family, your own people, and it's the people, not the material things.
Yeah, I think you've been really inspiring person for the maritime world, and both Adam and I have known you for a while, but I'm so pleased that you found some time while you aren't offshore and you could join us on Sea Views, because you've given us a really unique aspect and perspective on working offshore.
Well, thank you for being so kind. But I've followed Sea Views and all the different podcasts that you do through the line there, especially the one with women, as I'm a champion for women in maritime as well. So it's really good that you've provided a voice for women. And this is much of the mentoring that I do in schools, colleges, and universities. I always ask for females, and it doesn't have to be from STEM subjects, but invariably it is. So if they're hydrographic surveyors or geologists, to give them a chance and to empower them to walk out into what is still predominantly a man's world, and feel safe to do so, but also because they are competent, to show that they're competent and not have to do twice the job just because of their gender. So that's important for me as well. And your Sea Views and the people you have are absolutely fascinating. Some of them from very niche sort of disciplines as well in the maritime. So it's really good to listen.
I learn a lot. It's always really interesting.
We all do, don't we? Every day is a learning day, is what I say.
Maritime. That's why maritime is so giving as an industry. I mean, I worked for the Coast Guard for 18 years. I did every bit of aspect of maritime over that time. So I thought. But, 4 years later, after finishing that job, and I'm still learning even more, learning all the time. There's always another aspect of maritime, that you didn't really dig right into. And, I just love going down all the rabbit holes, really.
It's so diverse when you think about it. Even the classifications of the vessels, all the different vessels or what they're used for, whether it's cargo, container, cruise line, the yachting industry, fishing. There's so many opportunities out there, and a whole wide range of different people involved with it. So it's always going to be fascinating, the maritime, and I think that's why I'm still passionate about it, because like I said at the beginning, the main buzz or the main thing, or why I'm here still talking about, is the people. Always about the people.
It's the most important thing, isn't it, when you work in an industry? I'm so glad you joined us. Thank you so much for coming on, Gordon. It's lovely to chat to you, and we'll follow you with great interest on all your adventures, as we always do, so that I don't have to walk up that mountain. Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Julia. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for your time. It's been amazing.
And we'll leave the bridge. I'll ring the bell, and we'll leave the bridge as carefully as we always do. But thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.
Fishing vessel Great Northern Labrador Coast Guard, we are reading you out and clear.